Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the webinar on Market Research 101. My name is Dolores Serafin, and I work for Alberta Agriculture and Irrigation with the Food and Bioprocessing branch. I will be your host for today's webinar. Before we start, here are a few housekeeping items. If you would like to ask a question, please click on the question mark symbol at the top right of your screen. I will make sure our presenters address all of the questions at the end of the presentation. You will also see a react symbol at the bottom left of your screen. This allows you to show your reactions to anything being said during the webinar. This webinar is being recorded. The link will be sent to all of you in an email after the live webinar. Today's webinar is for you if you are looking to start or expand a food, beverage, or cosmetic company. This webinar will educate you to help you set up for success and help you determine whether you can make money or, better yet, be profitable by learning about the value of market research. This 90-minute webinar will be on the elements of market research, how to conduct market research, and resources to guide your research process. Our speakers today are Jeewanni Fernando and Kristine Neal. So after completing her bachelor's degree in agricultural sciences and an MBA, Jeewanni Fernando moved to Australia from Sri Lanka in 2001 to do her master's degree. She then moved to Canada in 2004 with her family and completed her PhD in resource economics at the University of Alberta, specializing in the area of food consumer demand. In 2010, she began working as a provincial consumer market analyst in Alberta Agriculture and Irrigation. Passionate about the food market dynamics and its impact on small and medium-sized business, this job was a natural fit. Her work involves search and procurement of food market data, analysis and interpretation of market data, and provision of information to ministry and industry clients and the general public through a web page and through various media outlets. Media articles, presentations, webs, radio segments, and others according to client needs. Kristine Neal is a partner in Stone-Olafson with over 20 years of experience in market research. She started on the client side in brand marketing and consumer packaged goods, with the majority of work focusing on market, channel, and product development in both Tier 1 national brand and private label in North America. With a deep understanding of using insights to make decisions, she stepped over to leading the research required to do it well. Her work today focuses on helping plan research for deeper market understanding, improving brand relevance and experience, and most importantly, demonstrating ways to measure results. Stone-Olafson is an independent research firm in their 12th year of growth. So now I'm going to hand it over to Jeewanni to start us off, and then we'll send it over to Kristine for her to add even more for us. So Jeewanni, up to you now.
And good morning and welcome again to the webinar Market Research 101. And thank you, Dolores, for the introduction. And thank you, Avery, for inviting me to present at this webinar. It is an honor to be with you, all the attendees today, and thank you for taking time to join us. When I was asked to do this presentation, this focusing on small and medium businesses, I thought I should do some background research. And I found some interesting statistics related to our topic today. A new Canadian data shows that 21.5% of small businesses fail in their first year of operations, and about 50% survive up to 5 years, and only 1/3 get to celebrate their 10th year anniversary. We all know that managing a small business is not that easy. Many things contribute to the success and failure of the business. But do you know the most common fact of the failure? It is the failure to adequately do the market research before starting their businesses. My insights also shows that about 40% of small business fail because they do not do their market research and they're selling a product that customers are not interested in. So, in the corporate world, big companies, they allocate substantial amount of, resources to undertake market research. A small business, as a small business owner, that is not probably you don't have such resources to allocate for this kind of research. But I'm sure you can approach your own research needs at a comparatively lower cost if you have a very good understanding about market research. So with that intention in mind, I'm going to walk you through this. I am going to answer these questions. What is market research? Why conduct market research? When to do market research? And type of market research. The first question, what is market research? Basically, we know that research is a systematic investigation of something. In this case, it's your market. We say market research, so we can say market research is the process of gathering, analyzing, and interpreting information about your market. So your market include the product or service that you provided, and the potential or the existing customer, then marketplace, and your competitors. So if I use an example from the food processing industry, take a snack bar for manufacturer, for example. So your product is the snack bar itself, right? And your customer or the potential customer is the person who buy your snack bar. And the market is where you sell your the snack bar product, and the competitor is the other uh, snack bar producers that may be supplying to the same market. So one other thing about market research, actually, whether you aware of it or not, as a business owner, you conduct market research all the time. It could be when you're talking to your customer about your product, or when you're checking your competitor for your the same product price. But what we are trying to do here is to sort of formalize this process, and that can give you very valuable information. Then to the next question, why we conduct market research? Can simply say we do this to make informed decisions. We know that intuition and experience can be helpful at times, but research and solid information, facts and figures, paint a more sort of accurate picture about your markets. So that is why we are basically doing market research. But we said to make informed decisions. To make informed decisions about what? I would say we want to make informed decisions about these 4 P's. That is product, price, place, and promotion. So, as I said, when you do market research about your market, you focus on finding information about your product, customer, market, and competitors. So this information will very useful to make decisions about these 4 P's. Now, again, if I take the same snack bar example, you need information to make decisions about your product itself, right? Uh, Taking this example, what is the snack bar that you want to produce? What type of snack bars? Now, when you take the snack bar category, there are different snack bars. It could be healthy snack bar like a protein bar, or maybe it's a sweet snack bar, something that is, consumed for indulgence. So, who are the potential consumers, or particularly what consumers are looking for in your snack bar? The taste, the size, the packaging and information on the packaging. All these decisions making needs information about the product itself. Then the price. Then you need information to decide on the price of your product. So you should be looking at what is the popular profit margin for these kinds of products in the market. Then competitors price for this kind of product. So forth. You need that information to decide on your price. To make decision about your place, that is marketplace, where you're going to sell your product, right? Whether you can you can collect information and see if I can sell this online directly to the consumers, or am I going to do it in a put it into a retail channel, the convenience store. So to decide where I'm going to sell my product, you need market information. Then to promote your product, to it, to design a marketing campaign and advertising using the media to advertise, all that need information. All these decisions need information. So that is why we do market research, right? So all this information again very critical at your startup stage, and also if you want to grow your business into a say to a grow your business into a different market, international market, or do some innovations, adapt some innovations, then you need those information. So overall, uh, market research can help you to understand your customers or the consumers and their preferences, basically about 4 Ps that we have discussed. And it also help may help you to identify opportunities to grow and increase your profit. Then recognize and plan for your industry and economic shift. You can keep check and balances on your finances, inventories, and staff levels, and so forth. The monitor competition by identifying your competitors and their type of operation, their actions in the market. Then finally, the mitigate and manage risk in the business, because when we are doing market research, uh, you use actual facts and figures, not your intuition. So in that way, uh, uh, you can mitigate risk by when you are making business decisions. The next question, the when to do market research. So far, we have sort of understand or provided answers to the question as to why we do market research, right? To make informed decisions. When we make informed decisions, I would say I would say these 4 stages that is displayed here. The one point that we make important decisions is obviously when you're starting up a new business. Basically, you have to like, research information. It's very critical when you, where it's a critical component to your business plan. So when you are starting a new business, you need market research information. Then it could be for the existing business as well, earning repeat businesses and selling to your customers and designing advertising campaigning and promoting your product all need at that stage also it's especially important to have all the information and do for that to do market research. And when you're thinking about growing your business and particularly changing your business, maybe growing into a new market, changing your product, or sort of, adding innovations and so forth, it is very important to understand the growth potential and understand the impact of market changes on your business. So I would say these are the uh, important stages where you take or make important decisions, and therefore you need to do market research. So now at this point, assume that we have decided to undertake market research, right? The next step is to develop a strategy for that or a plan. So in this process, you need to select a type of market research to carry out your, the process. So when it comes to type of market research, there are two main types. One is primary market research and the secondary market research. In the primary market research, I'm sure our expert will go into details of this type of market research, but just to introduce this to you, primary research is where you do your research yourself or with the help of a market, research expert. You directly go to the source, usually that is your consumer, and you ask questions and gather information, right? In this method, you may gather you can gather two types of information, that is numerical data and non-numerical data. So that's called quantitative and qualitative. Quantitative data, as I said, numerical data, you can use different tools like surveys, questionnaires, phone, one-to-one surveys, and so forth. In qualitative research, it's not numerical, but you collect sort of information, for example, reasons behind consumers' behavior, the attitude, perceptions. So you collect more in-depth data about this type of, so for example, consumer behavior maybe. So then you use different tools there, focus groups, in-depth interviews, observations, and so forth. Then under secondary research, it could be both, can be either qualitative or quantitative as well. But depending on the type of information, the source of information, you can divide that into internal sources and external sources of information. So basically, these are the primary and secondary research are the two basic types, but we can mix this one. So these are called mixed method market research, and we can that can provide very valuable information too. In the next slide, so apart from these traditional two basic methods, with the advancement of technology, now we have modern types. We can call them modern internet, sort of modern market research, uh, using Internet of Things and AI, that is artificial intelligence. I'm sure you have heard about Internet of Things. If not, it is sort of an uh, it involves interconnection of multiple devices to the internet, basically computers and mobile phones. But nowadays it goes beyond computers and phones to include various other devices like automobiles, sometimes household items like refrigerators, even medical devices like heart monitors and so forth. So in Internet of Things, uh, in this system, the collection and exchange of data is possible or sort of enabled through different devices or sensors, software, and electronics which are embedded into this connected devices. Uh, this system is unique and it's very useful because this provide or help us to collect and analyze sort of massive amount of data. So it's really important because when you have good information, a huge amount of information, we can use that information to create more, personalized products or effective marketing campaigns and so forth. So one way is to use this Internet of Things is basically, of course, go to internet and search the internet, right, using content and keywords. The other thing is through marketing campaigns. Now, Internet of Things also helps businesses to promote and carry out marketing campaigns using various applications like Facebook, YouTube, My Google Business, and so forth. So after running such campaigns, you can also do market effectiveness analysis. So it can be considered as one type of modern market research. Now, in the next slide, uh, I would like to show you an example, a modern way of doing a simple market research using this AI-enabled ChatGTP. I think you have heard about ChatGTP. This is a tool or virtual assistant in which you user enter a prompt or a question to the chat box and it provides responses. Now, I'm going to use a similar example that we talked about um, and type a research question into this chat box. So I have typed it elsewhere and I'm going to cut and paste it here. So as you can see, my question is, what are the characteristics of consumers usually used protein bars in Canada? So as you can see, it gives me a list of consumer characteristics. There are about 10 characteristics, 10 characteristics here. So this is a good way to understand or gather sort of qualitative information. ChatGPT is not that right now. It is not provide any numerical research information, but we can expect that down the line. Uh, so it's interesting and it's simple way to do you know gather descriptive information about something. Then uh, so far what I have provided is an overview of the market research, right? I know we have an expert. Uh, she's lined up to provide you with the in-depth information on primary research method. Therefore, I'm going to focus on my next section on secondary research, secondary market research. Secondary market research, as its name implied, provides second-hand information. These information sources may either come from within the business itself, they are called internal sources, and maybe from outside the organization or outside the business, that is called external sources. Usually, this is the first method that we should try before doing primary research. So it is logical to talk about this method first. First of all, we will see what type of information that we can collect using secondary research. I would say this method provides big picture information related to your business. So one type of question to address is current economic condition. Uh, Current economic condition of your business or impacting your business. This may include inflation, unemployment rate, then the growth, like we can look at GDP, then fiscal and monetary policies, and so all information related to economic factors. Then we can also look at find out trends which are influencing the industry or your business. Um, this may include consumer trends, consumer preferences, then product price trends, other market trends. Then, from the production perspective, technological shifts and what is happening in the process side, and so forth. Then, if you are thinking of growing your business to from the local market to the national or international level, you can find out if there's any demand for your product in the international market. So it's again big picture information. Then the questions about your consumers, overall consumer groups. What is the population, ethnic diversity, the age, the income level, uh, in your target market, right? And the labor is also a very important aspect of any business. And you can look for information to see other people with required skill sets out there and how to hire them, what to pay them, and etc. Then going into a bit more details about secondary research based on that different sources. Now, in this one, We'll talk about internal data sources. Internal data sources are sort of in-house data sources that you can find within your organizations. Uh, for example, suppose you have a website. You can use website data for sure. So it is common to have some sort of analytics built into your website when you have a website. So mostly, for an example, we use Google Analytics uh, to track website data. So for example, website traffic data, it's a very good secondary data source, right? And there are some inside databases as well. For example, if you are using a accounting software like Simply or QuickBooks, etc., then you have an in-house database. These softwares normally record your customer information, sales data, and your inventory data, and so on. So this type of data provides some good information and a good secondary source. Then you may have some previous research reports that you have done for your organization and advertising campaign results. These are also a good internal data sources. Then customer generated data. This comes directly from your customer, right? And customer feedback through, it could be through your website or talking to your customer, as you can gather information like that way within your organization. Then the external data sources. Uh, this refers to the data that publish outside of your organization. There are many sources out there. For example, the government data. Now, as Alberta Agriculture and Irrigation, we provide a lot of valuable information to small and medium food businesses in Alberta. Um, then there could be other government ministries like Treasury Board of Canada, Treasury Board, Alberta Treasury Board, and Finance. Then Economic, uh, Ministry of Economic Trade, and then when you look at federal government, you have Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada related to food business and small businesses. Then Statistics Canada, Industry Canada, all so all of those government sources. Then media, including newspaper, internet, and everything. You can gather a lot of information from basically using internet. You can uh, gather information from media. Then industry associations. There are a lot of trade associations for we have Alberta Food and Beverage Association. Then for the grocery sector associations and their publications, Canadian Grocery is a good publication that you find a lot of good information. Then in the food service industry, Restaurant Canada and their publications. And depending on your business, you have different industry organizations, dairy producers associations, grains, livestock, and so forth. Uh, when you look at universities and educational institutions and public journals, this is again another good source. Uh, then there are third-party commercial research organizations. Usually, it's a it's expensive, but sometimes there are some free materials there too, and of course, public libraries. So with that information, now we'll see quickly see how we sort of undertake a secondary research. As you remember, I said that market research is gathering, analyzing, and interpreting data from your market, which includes customer, product, market, and competitors. So in doing this, you have to focus on one area at a time, right? Like suppose that you want to understand your consumer or what are the trends or uh, basically you want to understand your consumer. So you have to come up with a question one at a time, right? So, for example, I take the same example and I ask this question: what are the trends in consumer preference for snack bars? So that's my research topic or that research question. Then you go and uh, try to understand or identify sources where your research sources are. So think about how to find relevant information. Obviously, the starting point would be to go to internet and do an internet search. So you can use keywords to search sources. Like you can use the keyword snack bars, consumer preference for snack bars, or market trends for snack bars, something like that. So you use keywords and search internet to identify uh, sources of data, right? Then think about what are the organizations that may closely working on this topic. So it could be there are market research companies, there are government publications on snacks and snack bar produce uh, the related research. So by doing that, you prepare a list of sources that you can use to understand your research question. The next step would to so you collect information now using those sources and combine and compare. Just for provide you an example here. So suppose that we can understand consumer preference for snack bar by looking at sales trends, right? Suppose you get this sales trend data from two different sources, so you have to combine them. And for example, you can see how the sales have been uh, performing, like sales are increasing or decreasing. Is there gaps in that information? So maybe you have to do it again. So you have to go back to the stage one, the step one, and repeat the same process again. So you can do it for different questions that you want to answer or get answers to. So that's a quick uh, quick explanation how to conduct your market research. And this one, just to touch base on advantages and disadvantages of secondary market research. So I'm not going to explain one by one, but I think the biggest advantage is the cost and time efficiency of secondary research, and the disadvantage that we always come across that one, it's very hard to find the most relevant data. So with that, I think I've covered my section, and this next slides give you some resources with the links to each resource that we have identified, and hopefully uh, you can use this in doing your market research. So I think it's it's the end of my section, and Dolores, maybe our next presenter would take over from here.
Yes,
Thank you.
you bet. So we're going to save all of our questions for both Jeewanni and Kristine till the end of Kristine's presentation and then answer them all at once. So I am now going to allow Kristine to share her screen with us. And there we go. And so welcome, Kristine. It's all up to you now.
Great, thanks so much. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to this group. Just so you know, my roots and background really started in sort of value add agri-food. So right from oat fractionation in Saskatchewan to try to get value add for farmers to organic plant certification for bakery mixes, then eventually moving over to tier one packaged goods, where I got to be part of a team in Canada that developed customer marketing and helped build and launch Kool-Aid jammers. So I feel like I've seen this for a lot of angles. So having kind of been in the trenches of this work for quite a few years, I want to share a lot of the learning. And for those that have already been through the product launch process, some of it may seem redundant, so I apologize. For some of those that have not been through a product launch process, I want to say in advance that I'm not trying to overwhelm anybody because there's a lot, but I do want you to be aware of the practical things. So Hopefully this hits the mark, you know, sort of at the right level for at least enough of you to be worthwhile. So I know that Jeewanni kind of covered a little bit about why do market research to begin with, but I want to kind of take it from a bit more of a practical perspective when it comes to who your audience for the research may be. So if you're thinking of developing a value add product or a consumer packaged good item, probably you're going to be wanting to list it at a retail channel somewhere, and you really are building a business case for your product. You're going to have your meeting, you're going to have a chance to present it. All of those facts become really important. So whether you're listing in grocery, pharmacy, club, convenience, it's going to be the category manager that makes that listing decision, and they're looking for really specific things. Also keep in mind to know what you're asking for when you go in. So are you looking for a permanent listing that requires listing fees? They're huge. You are the incumbent because national brands are probably going to be what they call category captains and get to plan the category with the retailer already. So you're always an incumbent. But asking for something like an in and out or a seasonal or a pallet distribution just to test the waters is sometimes an easier ask. And then there's a lot of alternatives. A lot of people getting a product into market. You can look at farmers markets, events, kiosks, pop-up. And I know more and more people in this space are going direct to consumer and subscription. So if you can figure out a distribution to get your product to market, bypassing traditional retail, it's a fantastic way to get some momentum and actually makes you really purchasable by national brands. So that's something to think about. And then also just keep in mind, because I know there's a lot of chatter in the industry about, oh, well, I'll just list it on Amazon. Just so you know, a lot of the national brands are already starting to list directly with Amazon, so you are going to be up against the same competition. So when you think about the category manager, if they're the gatekeeper of whether your listing happens or not, what makes sense for them actually makes sense overall. So even if you're not, you know, going after gold and trying to get a Costco listing or a co-op listing or something like that right away, if you go through the process that category managers look at, you're going to set yourself up for better success anyway. So category managers, they look at every single product on their shelf as a business unit. And for every consideration of a new product, and as much as I just said, it's hard to get in, believe me, they are looking for something unique. But it has to benefit the shopper. So does your product uniquely fulfill a want or a need or a new experience for the consumer? But it also has to benefit the retailer. And they are not looking at it just, will this one individual product do really well? They're looking for how will this product shape what they call a category story. So for example, in breakfast cereal, if they're thinking about where is the market going, maybe they're moving into organic, maybe they're moving into high protein or gluten-free. If your product fulfills a role and expands that position, that's going to be important to them, even if you are not Kellogg's or somebody like that. And then the three elements of the business case that they're really looking to build are, will it drive the top line? The gold standard is if you're what they call a traffic driving item. So your product is so unique, it has the potential for people to actually look and say, oh, I can only get it here, therefore I'm going to shop with them. And that is a true possibility. We just finished doing some work for a retailer where we were doing ethnography and following shoppers. And basically I had a shopper picking the store only because they could get a very, very specific add hot water superfood hot cereal. So it does actually happen, and that's the gold standard, is if you can drive it and you're very unique and there's very few substitutes for your product. They're also going to be looking at top line, like, you know, do you appeal to a valuable size of market? So back to that, how many people in the category buy this, or how many people in the general population buy this? How often do they buy this? You know, what's the size that you're going after, and is there brand momentum there already? So if you've already got an established brand and some momentum, they're going to be a lot more excited that you could drive the top line if you're there with another product. The second thing they're going to look at is bottom line. So is your pricing appropriate? Do you have enough net margin that everybody in the value chain can make some money and customers are still willing to buy it? So that's where market research comes into. What is the price expectation of your product? What's the price tolerance? And can you bring some margin to the category? You also have a shot at it if you fill a unique pricing niche. So if you've taken a look at all the competitors, maybe there's sort of a gap, like things are really expensive or really cheap and there's nothing in the middle. And you've got some unique value add elements of your product. You can talk about it being sort of like a gap fill for them. Then the last thing that they're going to be looking for is risk mitigation. So is your supply chain solid? And then do you have a robust launch plan behind your product? And by a robust launch plan, it means a 360 marketing plan. I asked what 360 was about because I still hang out with the CPG folks and got her to give us I got her to give us some input into this presentation. And she says it means, what are you doing with your marketing that will be direct into stores? So a promotional plan, packaging, maybe it's a display merchandise that they can pop up for the launch, as well as out of store. Are you going to be doing some things to promote it? Maybe it's a digital campaign on Insta. Maybe it's raising awareness at some local events that are happening that align with your target market. So anything at all that you're doing to support the product is part of that plan, and they're going to want to know about it. They're a lot more excited when you thought that through than if you haven't. Are you facilitating speed to market, and do you have compelling packaging? So the compelling packaging is a big one that I just want to stop on for a minute. It's really critical because even if you can't, packaging alone, let me put it this way, can't carry a poor product. But I've seen incredible products fail because they had poor packaging. So table stakes is you have to have a good product to begin with. It's appealing, it fills a need, it fills a want, it's got something that's desirable. But then you also have to have a really good product facing and some things to think about. Your product facing or the front panel of your package, how you want it to be merchandised. It should work really well regardless of whether the retailer that you're looking at packages them by what I call brand blocking. So all of the brands work together to tell a story. That's usually the easiest because you've got some visual impact right away. But a lot of retailers now split it up intentionally because they're looking for their own private label where they put all the subcategories together. So brand blocking would be everything Kellogg's is in one face. By subcategory would mean all of the flake products are together. The other thing to think about is shelf pop. You've got 2 seconds on a walk by for somebody to notice your product and find out the why they should even bother to pick it up. So I actually kind of recommend building yourself a little fake shelf set and just trying, like doing some early concept stage of your packaging to see how it stands out against it, even sort of qualitatively yourself. The last thing is your packaging has to be 100% compliant. They do not suffer, especially on an unknown brand or a first product launch. If your barcode doesn't scan, that costs them a lot of money. If you don't have approval of any claims that you're making on the project. So I left some useful links there for you to think about, as well as if you expect to be merchandised high, in the middle, or low, and the possibility that your product might lie flat, it might be to the side. Think about all those things when you're doing your packaging. And then again, market research can really help with testing if you're sort of doing it well or not. The team on this also asked me to give my comments on what's a reasonable payback. So all of this sounds expensive, developing the product, designing the packaging, thinking about a campaign to support it, getting compliance of your packaging, promotional and planning fees that the retailer is going to look for. With all of those costs to think about, what's a reasonable payback? And there's 2 calculations you can do just for kind of a quick finger in the wind. The first is just your return on investment. So your gross revenue minus your total costs over cost times 100, that's your percent ROI. But what they really look for in retail, I can tell you this, is your payback period. So back a million years ago when I started in consumer packaged goods, we would have payback windows that were nice and long because there were not so many competitors. They were 4 to 5 years. Nowadays, they kind of say it's about 2 years. And so this is still today. It's a quote from a VP that I know in the industry. They said, year one, you're just hoping to get your product listed somewhere or just really get a use case to try it out. Year two, hopefully you will break even. By year three, you should absolutely be making money. So on a truly new to market product, I would say it's a 24-month window to payback. If it's just a line extension, you've got a product, you're trying to add a new flavor or another value add, try to keep it as tight as a year because you may not get more than 12 months to actually prove your case. So with all of that said, and the why that we do research to support this and help build those facts in that business case to put forward, keep in mind the research won't actually make the decision for you. And I'm a research firm, but I'm still telling you, if you've got enough things in place, you will never get 100% certainty. Get the big rocks in place. How big's your market? Who is it appealing to? And what's their likely buying pattern? What are some differentiators that the category manager might be looking for to make the decision? And then decide if you've got enough to go for it. And that decision's really up to you. The other thing to keep in mind is that market research is not a sales forecast. There are some sales forecasting models out there. Their success rate is okay. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but one thing I know, having worked with sales forecasters before, which are the ones that will put the hard numbers behind this new product, if you get this distribution, will deliver this much revenue in a year. Those are the kind of things that keep people up at night. They have always said people don't do exactly what they say. So when you're doing surveys and things like that, and people say, I'm highly likely to buy your product, they may not. They may not do exactly what they say, but they're going to do something related to what they say. And then the last thing is just we're still, honing our craft and research. You're always going to be learning something along the way. It's all good learning, but it's not going to be perfect. So with all that said, just a couple of quick things that I'm going to do now is just talk about how to start any research project, when you want to do quantitative and qualitative, and how to do it. One thing to keep in mind is, first of all, get a really clear problem or opportunity statement. I think the worst research I see is when people really aren't clear about what they're trying to resolve. So really understand what it is you're trying to get out of your research. Is it how many people might be interested in my product? Is it what do people like about my product? So I know the strongest message that I can promote on a face panel of a package if I have such limited valuable real estate. Be really clear what you want to resolve. And some examples of that, we get a lot as a research firm, people coming to us saying, I'm just curious about what customers think of my service. We always sort of push back on that because there's nothing to resolve. You're just merely curious. We're not going to give you good work if you're not clear as to why. If they say something like, which services exceed customer expectations versus those that are just table stakes and don't really differentiate us in an increasingly competitive market, so we know where to invest in further development and how to message for our product. Now we know what to do for them because we get what they're trying to really understand and what the go, no-go decision is going to be at the end of that research. So I always say the quality of the research depends on how well you define your problem or opportunity to begin with. It really helps you focus your thinking. So take that little bit of extra time up front and you will always get a better result. The second thing that you have, if you know you want research, is whether you want a qualitative approach. Qualitative is really exploration. So it's a really little sample, but you're going deep. You're talking to people directly and one-on-one, and it's really good for exploration. How are people thinking about this category? How do they shop it? what really matters to them, who are they buying for. It gives you things like mind maps and answers the why people do what they do, but it isn't going to give you a percentage or a hard number. So if you're trying to explore and really understand and get into the mind of a consumer, qualitative is absolutely the way to go. If you've already done that and you know it, now you want to get into quantifying it. So you want to be able to test, measure, determine. It'll answer things like how many, how much, how often, specifically who and their profile. There will be a number and a percent by the end of it. So I also say food for thought. Ask yourself who the audience is going to be. If you're doing it to de-risk and asking somebody for money or investment and to take a chance on you, you probably want to lean with some quantitative numbers because they're looking for risk mitigation. If you're looking for just generating excitement or getting somebody to tell a story, that personal story and that understanding the why and the psychology is a bit more qualitative, or if you're trying to design the product or packaging to begin with. So it really kind of depends on what you're looking for. I'm going to start with qualitative really quickly. And again, it's for nuance and deep understanding. The easiest kind for you to do, and you don't need a market research consulting firm to help with it, is simply what we'll call ethnography or observation. So it's just watching behavior in the real world. You can go watch people in grocery stores, you can watch them at the farmers market. I always like the food truck example because if you're thinking of launching in a new community, go to where there's a food truck event and find out where the people line up. What kind of food is appealing to them for this audience? So it will tell us the what people do and behavior. One thing I noticed, for example, at some work I was doing recently, even people that were very, very familiar with nutrition and products, they'll still flip a box over and read every panel before they put it in the cart. So watching, I don't need to design a survey. I can just watch what people do when they're shopping in my category, and it'll tell us the what they do, but it doesn't necessarily tell us the why behind it. So oftentimes with ethnography, we will do some watching and then we'll also combine it with a little bit of qualitative work and questioning so we can understand why it matters. This is used a lot in land development, in retail strategy, in product development. So a lot of what the folks in your area are looking at, and in UX texting for digital. The next, what I'm going to call easier way to do qualitative research is one-on-one interviews. So I like this not only because you get so much information from every person that you talk to and you can really go deep with them, but frankly, it's a little bit easier. So asking people for, somewhere between 15 minutes to an hour of their time, if you're willing to give them an incentive. A lot of people, if they're interested in your category, they're going to want to do it anyway. People like talking about things. So it's an easy one. It's something that's easy to do on your own. It's a good first step rather than trying to manage a focus group. The other thing is you can also do some cool things with it. So for example, if you're looking at a product that appeals to children, I've done, for example, for Horizon Organics and children's yogurts. The mother's the one spending the money. She's the decision maker and the gatekeeper. The kid's the one that we need Pastor Power from to speak to. I would do in-depth interviews with them together. And it was really cool because the mom could find out, what's going to keep their kid happy. The kid could find out what the mom is looking for. For us, for both of them, really helped us understand for the client what they needed to focus on for the packaging and the flavors. So on the top, I've got that kind of bar on this one. You'll see to the left is easier. I'm going to give you little bars on this to say, well, this is a little bit harder. But it's really popular. This one's a bit harder, but getting a bit of a resurgence is focus groups. So focus groups are like they sound. You pick a focus topic, you get a group of people together in the room, and you get them asking things together, and you can build off of what they're saying and off of each other. So it's a little bit tighter for time, and that you can catch a room full of people at once. We always say maximum 10. We kind of like the sweet spot of 6 to 8 people. It's helpful if you have it in a facility. You don't have to, but it is helpful so that you can have somebody third party neutral doing the research in the room with participants. and you can be in the background learning from it. So these ones take a little bit more time in planning, but they're quicker and you get all the results together, and it's sometimes interesting to see how people interact. The only time that I won't recommend them is for things like if you've got something that's like a touchy topic, very, very personal. There might be, if you think of the psychology behind it, if there might be some shame involved in where it's going, and that is easily triggered. For example, if it's about environment, if your product's about environment, and you don't want anybody in a room that's ever going to want to say, honestly, for me, it's just cost. I can't think about this right now, because there's shame involved in saying that. But if you were to pull them apart one-on-one, they might be a little bit more honest. If it's that kind of a situation, don't go with a focus group. If it's easy, where it's just people talking about, oh, what flavors excite them and what new health products excite them, that's the kind of thing that works really well for a focus group. In person is having a big resurgence because people are kind of getting sick of online, but you can still do it digitally. We still do them today when we have to pull people across from across the country, or if it's a very, very specific window that you're trying to bring in of people and you can't get them together at the same time. For example, business to business. You can move it digital, you can do mini groups, and you can also do what I'm going to call a variation that's an in situation. So going to people's homes, going to an event where people are at and just pulling them aside. There's all kinds of variations that you can do with this. So, feel free to get a little bit creative. And then the last thing, I'm not going to go too deep on it because it's one of the hardest things to do, but it's so rich, is doing a co-creation session. So if you've got subject matter experts on something like maybe it's food and ingredient nutrition, and you've got some experts on product development, you want to bring some customers in, you want to bring some retail partners in and have a co-creation to develop maybe how a final product comes together or a package comes together. Co-creation is great because you bring everybody together and solve the problem at once. But they do take an awful lot of time and planning. So they're specific use cases, and I'm always happy to answer questions on when that occurs. When it comes to qualitative, I'll say, even if you are doing it all yourself, because qualitative research is the most expensive in terms of number of people that you can reach and the cost per person, it is by far the most expensive. So there are some things you can do and reach on your own, but even if you're doing it so, I recommend you go through all of these steps of writing a brief, really being clear about all the logistics, and I've listed some here for you, writing the discussion guide and proofing it, and I'll talk about that next. Before you do the research, if you do all of that, you're likely to get a better quality outcome. So just go through those steps, even if it's on your own. And then just a reminder, when you are doing the research, it's so tempting to go off the first thing somebody said and say, yep, that's the answer, or kind of add what you want to happen onto what they're saying. Try to really be dispassionate, really listen, really record, stay true to the nature of it, where you're not seeding your thinking, but really just truly exploring. Then take a step back and look at all the data and think about how many times you heard it without prompting. Is it a big theme? What is it really telling you? Qualitative is wonderful, but sometimes it allows a little bit more bias in the interpretation of the result. That was just a warning there with qualitative. The discussion guide, I'm not going to go super deep into this, but generally speaking, this is something that you can think about, is that there's sort of 4 points to it. The first is always an introduction in your discussion guide. So when you're going to interview somebody one-on-one, or if you're going to have a little mini focus group or something like that, you want to have a pre-plan the question you're going to ask. That's your discussion guide. And it's not a script. Like, you can go off depending on what people are more interested in and what they can actually answer to. So we always say it is not a script. You are not reading something. This is real-time communication. But do have the preparation in advance. And the 4 parts are the introduction. Tell them the purpose of it, why you're doing this, cover any process things that need to happen. I'm going to ask you things up front. Please ask me any questions at the end, or if it's digital, use the hand marker to say if you want to stop me and ask further, just anything like that that they need to know about it. And by all means, make them feel comfortable. The quality of information you get from people depends on how comfortable you make them up front. Do not bypass that. If people feel in any way intimidated, if they're not sure that you really want to hear what they have to say, they're going to clam up and you're going to miss your window. So just make people feel super comfortable. If you're not a person that's good at that, you're an introvert, you're more of the analytics or design person, rope somebody in that you know is a people person and can do it, and get them to do it for you. Also, this is not actually required in research, but it's a best practice in my opinion. If you're going to record the research, ask permission. Nobody likes to find out after that they were being recorded. So I don't care what I'm doing, or even if the screener asked them when they were recruiting them, I ask again before I actually hit that record button, because I don't ever want anybody to feel blindsided in our work. The next thing you're going to do in your discussion guide is come up with a warm-up question, just something super easy to answer to get the conversation flowing. It can be part of the research, but and useful, but it should be really easy to answer. So something like, what's your favorite day of the week to go shopping, to go grocery shopping? When do you love it? When do you hate it? Things like that. Super easy to answer, but it actually can give you some context for the work. Then sort of if you've got if this is a sandwich and you've got the bun, this is going to be the meat, and the stuff in the middle is your research topics. On qualitative work, I would say don't pick any more than 6 topics, absolute maximum to cover, or 6 major questions to cover. This is a conversation. It's not a survey. It's exploration. So you're going to have to be really economical. Make sure that every question is really important to the research objectives. And if you've written them out, this should make it easier. In terms of the order, go from the least personal and the easiest to answer to the more challenging and difficult, and maybe a little bit more personal to answer. So again, that allows people to warm up, gets them in the train of thought, and then you can kind of build on it once they're comfortable, and it's going to work a lot better. Think about the question format as well, being open-ended. I know that sounds silly to remind on in qualitative, but you'd be surprised how often I see it. So don't ask something like, do you think this concept is good? Ask, what do you like about the concept? Then you can prompt a whole bunch on it about the things that they like. Then you can say, well, what didn't you like about it? If you can kind of see negative facial expressions to begin with, reverse it. Oh, seems to me like there's some things you don't like about it. Tell me about that. So really keeping it as a conversation rather than a, do you like the concept? Yep. I mean, now you've got to start prompting right away. The other thing about prompting is there's an art and a science to it. It can be as simple as don't respond right away. People are not comfortable with information gaps. If you just look at them and sort of, raise an eyebrow, they're probably going to want to fill it in with more detail to begin with. So you don't even have to say anything for a prompt. It can be supernatural, or you can be direct. Tell me why that's important. What made you think that when you saw it? And I sometimes get really, sort of challenging with prompts, but in a nice way. So for example, I was just doing work last week and somebody said, well, I won't buy it through an app. I hate apps. I don't want any apps. And I kind of thought about it and I said, well, can you show me your phone? You've got a lot of apps. So help me understand that. You say you don't like apps, but you have a lot. Oh, well, I like these apps. So you kind of don't have to take a first answer to begin with. You can kind of challenge people a little bit to get after what you want. And then you can also do what I'm going to call projective techniques. Well, nobody would want that. Really, nobody would want that. Is it, who might want that? And then they'll describe a person that is sort of unflattering, but you kind of get more to the heart of the problem that they really had with your product or concept to begin with. Like, oh, well, that's just for rich people that don't care and don't have to think about a budget and the pricing's ridiculous. It's like, all right, really, they're not upset about the concept. They're just kind of upset about the pricing. And then I would say don't lose your chance at the very end to ask a final question. Is there anything else? And make sure you get the signatures for an incentive if you're offering it. So that's qualitative research and kind of my best thoughts on it when you're trying to start out. Now I'm going to talk about quantitative research, or the things that give you hard numbers, big sample groups. Qualitative is tricky because it's just a few people. You've got to make sure you get really the right person answering you. There's a lot more time up front. It's a little bit trickier in that way, but it's kind of fun when you do the research. Quantitative research is quicker and a little bit easier to set up, but it's the analytics and all the things that are involved in it are maybe not as much fun to do. So that's kind of like the pros and cons, I think, of quant in a way. Having said that, quant will give you those hard numbers that help you estimate what might my revenue be, how big is my market, what's the purchase cycle and how frequently, therefore, what could a year one cash flow look like. This is where you're going to get more of your answers to that. And just like qualitative, there's easier ways to do it and harder ways to do it. One of the easiest ways to do quantitative is to get a sample of respondents that I'm going to call a convenience sample. So what makes a convenience sample rather than a statistical sample? They're easy to get. So this might be, if you're a member of association, they have a survey that you can jump in on, or they've got a group of participants. I'll use the health food example. They're all health food app subscribers. Some way that you've got access to a sample of people that you think might be interested in your product. You can't say that that's indicative of the whole market because it's not. But it gives you a good idea from people that are kind of in your example how well it's going to do. So it could even be existing customers or prospects that you've collected maybe at a farmer's market or maybe on your website. And it's not a bad way to start. What, quite frankly, it will tell you, especially if they're your existing customers, who are you winning with today? What's their profile? Okay, how many of like that do you expect to see in the bigger market, tying it in with your secondary research? And then you can ask them as well, why did you pick me? You might think you know, but them telling you, oh, well, frankly, I think your product is as good as somebody else, but this package is so much easier. It could be the smallest thing that you didn't expect to know that tells you how to be more successful and scale up. The other thing about convenience sample is if it's your data and you've collected some information, you might have the email address to reach out to them, but you can also connect your data with what you ask in the background later and do a little bit of richer analysis. So there's some really cool things you can do with a convenience sample. And I would say overall that customer samples are best used when you want to understand how they heard about you, so what channels and marketing might work for you, why they chose you, so what the lead in your product story is, who else they choose when they're not picking you, so who are your competitors and substitutes, what's the best feature, what's their attitude about your product, and how do they like to use it. It also might surprise you that it's not even for them, it's for somebody in their family or to solve a problem. And then demographics, which is going to be really important for your business case to know how to identify them in the bigger market. What is their age group? What is their income level? Do they live inner city? Do they live in suburban areas? Do they kind of align to a certain lifestyle or vocation? The only watch out with these is if you're doing a concept test for sort of a line extension or something, keep in mind anybody who answers from your customer base is going to be your super fans. So that's just to watch out. The other sample that you can do is what I'm going to call a random population sample. This is harder. You're probably going to need to go out of your own resource area to do this. You'll probably need to engage a market research firm and or a sample supplier for this. And I don't want anybody who's an academic to be too fussed about this because true random sampling is almost impossible today. Even Stats Canada doesn't do in the hard sense of the scientific word, a truly random population sample whereby every single human in Canada has an equal probability of participating in the research. So just keep in mind, this is as random as you can get. It's as statistical as you can get, and don't get too fussed about it. Market research is very practical research, so we have to use some things with a grain of salt. But some parameters of a random sample is a given trade area. If you're expecting your product to launch first in Western Canada, you're thinking about, BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan. Do you really want all of public opinion, or is your product really going to be focusing to, maybe it's women only, maybe it's people with a gluten intolerance only? You can start to figure out who you're looking for. And quantitative research can be done very, very early stage. So just what's the sizing of the market, and is there a need gap in it for the category, to concept testing at early stage, to what I'm going to call mid-stage. I've got a bit of traction. How far can I scale? What's the percentage that'll be interested in this? We just did this for a coffee company. Or it can be later stage. How do I grow, build? I would say that best use for customer sample, or sorry, this should be, I'll have to change that. That's an error. Random population samples. Where do you stand in the market? What's your brand position vis-a-vis the competition? What's your high potential and low potential audiences? So with segmentation, what are the usage and attitudes around the category, as well as your specific product or service if you've got a bit of traction, and then the demographics. The only watch outs are reliable sample for this kind of work. It honestly takes quite a bit of work. So if you use a do-it-yourself sample, there's a number of ways that you can do this. You'll have to have your own survey platform, and then you'll have to email out to participants or post it for people to participate in. My only watch out with this is Castle policy in Canada is a lot more rigorous than by phone. So if you're doing a quantitative sample, and there's a million reasons why it's easier and preferable, just make sure that you've got permission by your sample to contact them to do a survey. That's the only watch out that I just want to flag. But otherwise, I've got some survey platforms here that are pretty easy to use and reliable, not super expensive, and I would say go for it. If you want to do a statistical online sample, most of the time you're going to use panel sample providers. I've listed some that we've used in different cases. It's a little bit more technical to work with a panel sample provider. You usually need a little bit more of a sophisticated software platform that starts to get costly. At this point, honestly, it might become a trade-off with using a market research firm or doing it yourself. And the one watch out that I will have is every single panel sample has strengths and weaknesses. So a research company that also owns their own panel, they're going to want to sell it first. Make sure you do not ignore really good data cleaning in the background. So some things we look for: how quickly did they answer it? Any survey platform will time that for you. Is there a pattern of responses? Ask at least one open-ended question which doesn't have response choices, but just says, tell me about this, and lets them fill in text on their own and then read them to see if they make sense. We do all of this. On the best quality panels, we still have 5% waste of sample. We've seen as much as 25% waste of sample that's nonsense. So that's the other watch out, is you've got to make sure you've got clean sample. The joy of online, though, and digital surveying is that it can be an email invitation. It can be a pop-up on your website. You can use a QR code at an event or a place that you're sampling your product to get some info. It can be a text invitation. You can do geo-targeting. The way that you can get to people is broad, and it's really quick. It all comes together in a platform that's typically in the cloud, so it's really fast. We've done a quantitative sample in as little as 48 hours when there's been a real panic or a push. And it gives you all kinds of analytical stuff that you can do afterward to take a look at the data and solve your problem. The one other myth that I should bust, you might already know this, but a lot of people say, well, if I go online, I won't get older audiences. Yeah, you will. We close 65 and over groups first, quite frankly. We have a tougher time with the younger, so don't worry about that. There also might be times where you want to do by phone or in-person static entry of surveys. This is also doable, and you don't have CASL compliance with email to worry about. The only thing is this is 4 times the cost. So phone sampling is outrageously expensive, in person even more so. And be careful how cheap you go with this, because there's a lot of what I'll say is not great quality people doing it. So you got to make sure that if you do think it's important, and there's use cases for this for sure, if you've got a really specific geography or audience, like I only want people in this neighborhood or inner city or something like that, then you know what, there's sometimes a reason to do it. But just keep in mind it's expensive, and if somebody gives you a deal that's too good to be true, be careful the quality of it. Like when we're doing in person, we just finished doing it for Stampede. We actually have people on the ground doing supervision and QA, because sometimes the interviewer, let me just say, is not the best quality interviewer. So there's a case for it. It's really expensive, but there's some reasons why you might want to. Just like with qualitative research, you're going to build a discussion guide and there's a bit of an order to it. It's the same thing with quantitative. Building your research, you're going to want to start with some screening questions to make sure you're getting at the right people to answer. You're going to want to then go to behavioral questions, because those are easy. It's do you use, do you buy, how often, where, when, really easy things to answer. Then you're going to lay it into attitudinal. Do you like? Do you dislike? What bothers you? What do you hope for? Then the most personal is if you need values and belief related questions. So this is usually attitudinal questions that you can find out about. Things like saving money means I'm responsible, or it's shameful to waste. That's an attitudinal question. You could put something like that up, give it a really good agreement scale where people can agree, disagree, and you can get at some attitudes in beliefs, even though it's an online survey. So don't be afraid of it, but just kind of keep them after you've got the really practical stuff first. And then at the very end, anything that you don't need for screening at the beginning, you can profile it. So age, if they're in a partnership, income, education, if they're an opinion leader, an early adopter, what media they use, so you can pick your channels to support your product launch. You can ask all kinds of things, but the only thing that I'll say is keep in mind that unless you know what you're going to do with the information, leave it off the survey. Ideally, your survey will be less than 6 minutes. Those are the best. 8 to 10 minutes are okay. Make sure they're well designed. 15 to 20-minute surveys, we sometimes have to ask them because, for example, if you're doing a segmentation or you're doing a lot of attitudinal questions, you have to ask those on a scale. Those take up a lot of time, but the only way you can do a lot of advanced analytical modeling is with those formats. So we have to do them sometimes. You really have to test them then and make sure they're a well-designed, engaging survey. And I say in this day and age, anything longer than a 25-minute survey, you probably have bots, survey farms, or just abnormal people answering, and I would question your data if it's that long of a survey. So the biggest downfall I see with quantitative research is people trying to boil the whole ocean in a single survey, and just avoid doing that. I want to give you some question examples too if you're just starting out doing your own survey. These are the easier questions. Again, I've used my easy to hard scale at the top. Giving people a list of things and asking them to pick is the easiest. Use those the most. They're easy to answer, great data analysis, and they're quick, so they won't take up a lot of time for people. And they can be single choice. Which do you buy most often? You want to paint them into a corner if you're trying to choose. Or it can be a multi-choice. You could just rephrase that and say, which of the following do you like? and they might pick a couple, but your percent of the total overall will still give you a ranking of most to least. Another thing that you can do is a rank order question. So pick the top 3 things that are most important to you when you're choosing, say, a new yogurt. The brand name it may be probiotic, it may be grass-fed. This is your chance to kind of pick the top 3. And those are a really easy one to answer. Starting to get more cumbersome is the attitudinal and the values-based questions that I was talking about. You know, if you're trying to find out if your audience is really cost conscious or not, or if they tend to be excited about new things and this is a novelty for them, you might ask a series of questions like, you know, statements, I'm a spender more than a saver, I'm first to try, and get them to answer on an agreement scale. These are wonderful to do for attitudes, but just be careful how many of them you include because they're time consuming. And if there's too many what we'll call grid row questions, people will want to tap out of your survey and not finish it. So use them a bit more sparingly, but there's certainly a place for them. And then I want to say in the digital domain, there's such cool question types that you can do now. People are really visual. They like answering things. You can put up either a late stage or early stage package and get people to click what they liked or noticed first, tells you a lot. You can do sliding scales that are nice and visual. You can do a promotional description of your product and have people highlight what they like in green, highlight what they dislike in red, and then ask them, oh, why did you do that? So there's some really cool things that you can do with different survey tools and question types. I just wanted to point that out. It doesn't have to be all click and boring. And then just to keep in mind as well that there's some principles of good question writing. Be really clear, nice economical use of words. Be neutral. If you're doing attitudinal scores, it's okay to be really specific in what you're saying, but put a good scale on it after and make sure you've got a balanced set of choices so that it can represent all possible points of view, not just the one that you're hoping that they have. And then I would say to make sure it's accurate, test it on a few people. And then when you think you're okay with it, test it again on a few people. Every survey tool has a preview mode that you can get people to try it out first. We test the heck out of things. Once you've actually launched it, you can't go back and fix it. So just make sure that QA, you've left enough time for it. And then last, what I want to end on is just some things that I've learned sort of being in the trenches about launching products and developing markets. It's okay to build interest through smaller channels if the big channels seem daunting. Most of the products nowadays start that way, and bigger companies, quite frankly, love it because you have de-risked innovation for them. If you're bringing new products to market, that pains me a bit to say because I would love to see Canada stand on their own commercially. But honestly, in some cases, starting to build interest through smaller channel to get the listing, or whether you want to sell the company after, it's okay. Test the product for sure, but also test the package. Category managers do look for smart product placement facts. So when you go in to meet with them, having a good one-pager on why us and all the research that you've done in summary form, why it matters, that does help to convince them so none of it's wasted. Retailers are looking for differentiation. So different for difference sake is not what I'm saying, but something that isn't me too for sure. And it's not just consumer or market research. You can actually just go and walk into a grocery store and take pictures of all the competitors on it, or go to the farmer's market and take a look at it and do a promo, what I'll call grid for yourself. Who offers this product? How often am I noticing it's on sale? You know, where would I fit in this? How compelling would I be this being the case? And then use digital, but I would say in your marketing, but this is a big watch out for small companies, really watch what I'm going to call attribution fees. So people are getting fatigued by Google. All the sponsorship comes up first. Anybody who clicks on you for any reason, they will bill you for it. So I'm not saying don't use digital to support your product, but I'm just saying really watch out for attribution fees and make sure that you know it's a good strategy. And I would say those are sort of my final what I'm going to call tips from the trenches. And I will happily, because this is a lot to take in, um, make this available to any of you and answer questions after.
Perfect. Thank you, Kristine. That was so enlightening for me. So questions for you. First one, this will be for Jeewanni. So if you want to turn on your camera and unmute yourself, Jeewanni, it's
Yes, sure. Got it.
what do you do when when you do market research and you don't seem to have any competitors?
Hmm. It's an interesting question. So if you don't have competitors, I guess it would be easier for you. Like even even it's so like if you know beforehand that you don't have competitors, then you can go with the researching other components that I talked about. Uh, so I think it's less one step of your research agenda, right? Like you don't have to research about competitors, but go with the other components that you have to obviously do your research on your product and customer and the marketplace. So yeah, if Kristine has anything to add to that on the practical side, yeah.
Yeah, we do it for untested all the time. And I think it's okay if you don't have competition. That's just a concept test. And like I said, it can be as easy as, presenting it and asking people about it in a new space. Like you can find out things that are adjacent in the secondary research. So there's gluten-free and health domain growth. That's helpful to know. It crosses over into these areas most often. And then once you've got a feel for it, pick a place where you can just start to concept test a bit and see what people's reactions are. That's fine. There's not very many truly new. There's still be some things that you can use as pointers, but then just go ahead and do an early stage concept test and use that as your jumping off point.
Perfect. Thank you, ladies. Are there recommendations for budget for startup and later for growth stage for research?
Uh, that's a tough one because, we've had very large companies do just little pulse things for growth that are very small problems to answer, to sort of smaller companies that look for joint funding so that they can really get a market sizing to make a clear decision. So it's really hard to give recommended, but I would say, if you're talking about a professional market research firm, qualitative is going to start in and around close to $10,000. Surveys, if you're doing them managed by someone, very, very tight. If you're bringing the sample to the table, is going to be in and around the same price range and then kind of go from there. So it really depends on, do you want all of Canada? Do you want Western Canada? Do you want Calgary only? Do you have sample to work with? Do you need us to get sample? But I would say if you just ask. I don't think any company is against somebody calling up and with a real genuine, hey, I'm trying to launch this. I've never done it before. What do you recommend? I've got this much of a budget. What's my best bet given this was my challenge? They'll give you some ideas. Like no, none of us mind doing that. Even if we don't do the work, we're all in this for local community to do well. So just ask a few people and then you'll kind of get a feel. But I hope that kind of helps. And if you want to do really broad national segmentation, you're talking upwards of 60 grand and above. So it's a big range.
All right, thank you. Um, Jeewanni, how do you contact Alberta Agriculture if you want some of our data?
Uh, of course, like we have a website called Open Data, Alberta Open Data.ca, right? So you can go and search it up there. There's so many resources are listed there. And other thing is that you can contact specific areas of our department. Like for example, if you want to do something research about something on market data or consumer, I can be your contact information. And I know every group is doing a lot of workshops, seminars, webinars like this. So you can contact them and get the links. So yeah, internet and specifically contact us would be the best way to get hold of us or the data.
Perfect. Just a reminder for anybody on the line, if you want to ask a question, please go to the question mark at the top of the screen and enter your questions. Other than that, right now, that is all of the questions that we have, which would be perfect timing to end. But it was like, while we're waiting to see, I'll just do my final little thing, saying thank you very much, Kristine and Jeewanni, for sharing all of your knowledge with us today. It was absolutely fantastic. So to everybody on the webinar, you'll receive a short survey at the end of this, and it will be great for helping us determine what other webinars that we should organize that would be beneficial for you to grow your company. The survey should take you no more than a couple of minutes, probably less than a minute actually, to complete. So in the comments in the last question, please let me know how easy or hard this new software version that we have is working for you. I know some people think it's great, other people struggle. So just if we can find out what works, what doesn't, and that would be fantastic. And as I've rambled on, nobody else has asked any questions, ladies. So I would like to thank all of you for sharing your time with us today. And oh, we do have a question. It was like about the flavones, Flavones. It was like when I look up the data, there is very little based on flavones in the market, and I think you indirectly answered that question, ladies.
On if people are interested in flavonoids, is that the question?
Well, it's just it says when I look up any data, there is very little based on flavones, Flavones, in the market.
Flavonoids,
That
okay.
is the whole question. So.
Yeah, I would say, but there you might not get a lot of data on that specifically, but you will get it on what it is trying to resolve from the consumer perspective. That's what you're looking at is, what is the consumer market for whatever that is trying to resolve and what's available. I would say that's kind of yeah.
They're saying for orange peel powder. But I think we're going into more detail here, and I think maybe we can answer that off the webinar.
Yeah, and again, if I don't mind staying on, if
Okay.
that's the
Yep.
best way, or if they want to fire me a question, that's fine.
I think maybe going directly to you might be the better because he also wanted to know
Sure.
how he could contact you, Kristine. So that would
Oh,
lead
okay.
into that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah, no problem.
All right, great. All right, so thank you once again, everyone, for joining us, and have a great rest of your day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.